My name is Lockie Phillips, and I am a horse trainer, an instructor, a coach, an international clinician, and a horse dad. This is the Emotional Horsemanship Podcast, your pit stop in a troubled world to explore horse training that puts the horse first. You can expect controversy because, well, frankly, putting the horse first remains controversial. You can expect my opinions because I'm here to share them. You can expect facts because I'm here to share them. You can expect mistakes, and you can expect, well, humanity here because I am fundamentally a flawed human being. This place is a place for our guests and for myself to share our experiences freely and openly to help reach people just like you who have felt things or experienced things or thought things about horses that you might be afraid to speak of in other places. Here, we explore those things. This is your place to come home to horsemanship that just trains horses without saddling them with emotional baggage. Well, here we are, everyone. It is December 2025. If you're listening to this in real time, hello, I hope you're well. How are you? I hope this year passed well for you and that you find yourself at the end of 2025 better than when you started. If you are listening to this in the future, well, thank you for going back and doing a retrospective, but what you'll be hearing is a reflection of a moment in time. So this podcast has had inconsistent publishing over the last couple of months because I've just had no time. And I'm hoping to fix that next year. I do have a handful of recordings, really amazing recordings with some people in the industry who I think are really changing the game and pushing the needle. And these conversations were powerful and still live rent-free in my head, and I cannot wait for you to hear them. And I kept saying to myself every week, gotta publish that episode, and then reached the end of the week, and I got to choose between eating, sleeping, and laundry, or editing yet another piece of content, and I had to choose eating, sleeping, or laundry. So what I'm doing right now is bringing season 2 of the Emotional Horsemanship podcast to a close. This episode is the final episode for season 2. I've decided to call it because I really feel like I've come to the end of a season of my life and a season of my work too. And so I'm bringing this season of the podcast to a close, and the outstanding recordings that I have sitting on my editing pile will help open season 3 next year. And I've reached out to those collaborators and let them know that that's what I intend to do. So I am not the same person this year that I was a year ago. I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago. I'm looking at photos of myself from a year ago because social media has that rather hateful little function that says, oh, here are your memories from a year ago. And I look at them and I go, who is that? I don't even know who that is. I look at myself and I see inflammation. I see puffy eyes. I see sluggishness. I see a dullness to my eyes. And I now know what was informing all of that. And right now, I feel so different in a good way. I feel this is my first year of professional service, period. So since I've worked since the age of 15 and 9 months. I got my first job when I was 15 years and 9 months, which is the youngest it is permitted in Australia for people to obtain employment. As soon as I could obtain employment, I did. When I was 15 years old and 9 months, I got a job at McDonald's and I worked in the kitchen. So that was my first job. But since I've worked, I would always reach the end of a work year or a work season more or less depleted, more or less running on fumes, more or less having burnt the candle at both ends. And I used to frame that as success. I no longer do, because you're playing with borrowed time when you do that. When I was doing that, I was playing with borrowed time. And with each subsequent accumulative year where I used myself up until the nth degree, I found myself having less degrees to nth with. I found myself being able to give less and less as I found myself at the end of each year. I was borrowing energy from next year, and the next year I borrow from the next year. And eventually you just start working and through chronic depletion. So when I started getting mild, what I believe to be autoimmune symptoms, I knew that I was pushing it too far. And I'll give one example. Earlier this year, I was in Taos, New Mexico, in the United States, and I was delivering a clinic there. You can actually watch that clinic behind a paywall on the full clinic's recordings section of my online platform. I have 3 clinics published there from start through to finish, and you can watch that Taos clinic in its full length version, including question and answer section. But the part that wasn't recorded, and maybe should have been recorded from the Taos clinic, was the share house that I was in with a small number of clients and friends that have been with me for many, many years. And we were all in a house together in this beautiful bungalow, and we would cook, share, and talk every day. And I remember it was the end of day 1 of the clinic, and we were all sitting in the living room talking, and we had just finished some food, and my cheeks started to go bright red and get flushed. But it wasn't a warm thing, it wasn't a heat thing. I was just like, my body was just burning up. And so much to the point that someone actually looked at me and said, Lockie, you're like all red. What's going on? I said, oh, it's nothing to worry about. It just happens when I'm pushing it too hard. When I'm pushing it too hard, my body gets this almost like MCAS symptoms. I've not been diagnosed or anything, but I knew that all I had to do was just put a cold cloth on my face and like have my vitamins, hydrate, and go to bed early. And I pulled up fine the next day. But that's kind of what I'm talking about. And then there would be in the past there would be brain fog, or there would be what I would call these catastrophic collapses where I knew I had about 20 minutes to play with before I needed to go lie down. But that's so 2021. I haven't had that since 2021. I tell you about this because I know that there are equestrian professionals listening, vets, farriers, maybe some instructors or trainers or two who believe that it's necessary to throw yourself on the altar of burnout in order to be of use to your community, or in order to be deemed enough by yourself, by your community, by an invisible dragon that's chasing you. And I want you to know that I understand that you're doing that because there's very real cost benefit analysis, very real late stage capitalism bullshit that we're all navigating. We've all got bills to pay. You know, it's tough out there. I get it. I really do. But I found that the more I do that, the less successful I am. The more I do that, the more I borrow trouble from a future and then destroy a less troublesome future in its stead. So declaring, maybe a little bit prematurely, but declaring that I believe 2025 has been the best year of my life so far. And my life, not just my professional life, but my life. At the beginning of the year, I was a little bit entangled. I was entangled with people, ideas, beliefs, and logistics that were keeping me tangled and stuck on a few key issues surrounding my well being and my potential. These entanglements were of a variety of different kinds, from proximal, meaning very close to me on an everyday sense, to being peripheral, meaning quite far away, but still entanglements nonetheless. When I identified that there were several entanglements, I started reaching out to people who could help and support me. Two people come to mind in particular. Well, a whole bunch more than two. Actually, I lie. I started realizing that I had to lean into community. I had to start leaning into my friendships, and I had to start leaning into the healthy collaborators, the ones that weren't trying to entangle, entrap, or ensnare me. So I started leaning into those and asking for their help and support. And from about April through to August of this year, each of those entanglements, one by one, hit the stop button and got off my bus. And then I found myself at the end of this year waking up with energy rather than waking up feeling like I'd been whacked with a sledgehammer by the how do I describe it? It used to feel like getting whacked by a sledgehammer by an exhaustion giant all night. And that's how I would feel when I would wake up. And then I'd go to work and still manage to deliver work that was good enough, that created growth and created support and change and help and good work for people by some kind of miracle. And for that, I'm very grateful. But started waking up with energy, started waking up with a smile on my face, started waking up and looking to my left and my right and being grateful for everything that was in my life and everything that was around me. And so I'm rolling down towards this year, not depleted and not exhausted and not upset and not annoyed. All of that, flip it, make it the opposite of what that is, make it the positive version of all of that. I feel resourced, I feel balanced, I feel happy, I feel grateful. And I'm so looking forward to next year. And I'm also looking forward to closing my doors and taking some time off. But I'm not taking time off because I feel like I have to save myself. I'm taking some time off because that's a necessary component of being a human being, is to take time off. And so that's what I'm about to do. I also want to nod to community again. This year, without any reservations, the community that has stood in support of me and my work, but more importantly, of each other, has really shown up. Despite geographical distances and logistics, we have shown up for each other more than once, all across the world. And I'm just blown away by it. In an age where competitiveness has replaced community and where people get stuck in high school and then transfer that well into adulthood with kind of interpersonal messiness, I'm really grateful for the people in my circle, personal and professional, and the way that they conduct themselves with decorum, with respect, with love, and with a lot of humor and fun. It's just been wonderful. And all the people who've come to visit me in my home this year, here in Spain, I love you and thank you for coming. And all the people I've gotten to see all over the world and meet in person this year, I want to thank you for bringing me into your home. All of these memories of all of these little happenstances that occurred in all of these different places. I was just on holiday in California with Laurie Halliday, who you've known from this podcast, and with her family. They've become like a family to me. And we went down to Big Sur and did a road trip down to Big Sur and down to the Carmel Valley and went to day spas. And then someone I know from my community drove in to surprise me at the day spa. And then we went out for dinner, and then we went whale watching. And it's just like, I cannot believe it. And then people who jumped to my aid and support in the middle of this year when the shit hit the fan. Well, I thought the shit was hitting the fan. Actually, the shit was leaving the fan. That's what was really happening. The way they jumped in to support me, nonetheless, I'm so grateful for you. There's also been in our community a lot of loss this year. There's been births, deaths, and marriages in my community this year. And there's been pain, there's been struggle, there's been stress, and we've stood with each other all the way through it. There are students in my community that live on opposite sides of a country to each other, that when they hear that their friend is in crisis, they get on a plane and fly there to help them. That's the kind of people I'm dealing with. It's unbelievable to me. And these are people that met inside the containers that I offer in my work. And this is an aspect of my work I didn't ever anticipate that other people would find home in my work. I'm just trying to pay my bills. I'm just trying to make a living. And I'm just trying to make a living with horses in a way that doesn't hurt and harm horses or horse people. And having said that, we will fail at that because it's not about perfection. It's about doing the best you can do and then pivoting when you identify mistakes or shortcomings. So someone asked me recently on a podcast, another podcast, they asked me, how would you describe emotional horsemanship to people who don't know what that is or what that looks like? And I said to them that it's very normal horsemanship and training without the bullshit. The bullshit from the horse's point of view, I might add. That's what it looks like. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, and I'm not so arrogant to believe that I've invented something out of thin air. I'm trying to make a wheel work for the horse as much as it's worked for us. I'm a little tired of horsemanship that works for the person at the expense of the horse. That's really what it comes down to. And so that means we have to look at standard practices critically and judgmentally. We have to. And what I've noticed this year in keeping my finger on the pulse of the industry, as much as I feel like I can without losing my mind, I try to keep my finger on the pulse of where is the collective consciousness moving to? What are people posting about? What are they showing about their work? How are they augmenting their messaging? What are the commentators saying? What are the clients asking for? What are people moving into and what are they moving out of? These are the questions I'm trying to ask because it's very important to me that I stay in touch with what everyone else is going through. And what I've noticed, and yeah, I'm going to call it out. And if the shoe fits, wear it. If the shoe does not fit, then I don't speak of you. What I've noticed, and this is just my opinion, and this podcast is a place for my opinions, is that a wide range of online influencers whom 6, 12, 18, 24 months ago were at the forefront of promoting horse first training. And I'll qualify that in a moment. These people who are promoting horse first training and pushing, calling for ethical and moral improvement, so many of them in 2025 drastically rolled back on that positioning, drastically pivoted, even started to pivot into opposition of the horse first training movement and started to promote against it, and even started to actively declare that the horse first attitude is the problem, and that the horse first attitude does not put the horse first, and it doesn't put the person first. And they took the horse first attitude, and some of them just pushed it into a volcano, metaphorically, and some created very coherent arguments against it, which I listened to. And some just straight up created a prejudice storyline. And so this was shocking to me because these people, as I said, 6, 12, 18, 24 months ago, were at the forefront of promoting for the horse first movement. And now, having spent time at the camp of horse first, now understand the attitudes, beliefs, languages, and talking points of the horse first approach, and now are weaponizing that against us. It's like they move into our house to understand our tendencies so that they can turn around and defeat us better from the inside out. It was like Lao Tzu art of war type stuff that I was seeing. And it was happening while I was active out on the road, doing clinics, doing a world tour, delivering then afterwards what I've counted and calculated was somewhere between 80 to 90, 97 hours of appointment-based services online every month, which means, yeah, that many hours me here teaching online or coaching online or editing. And then that's before I ever edit anything, which is why this podcast has been sluggish. That's before editing time. So I'm watching all of this roll back, and it felt like a betrayal. It felt like they were being traitors. But then I paused on that a little bit, and I agree that that's still a valid point of view, that there is a bit of betrayal going on there. And then I started to look at my community, and I thought, okay, well, they're rolling back for a reason. They're pulling back on the horse first approach for a reason, not for nothing. They're pulling back for a reason. I think they're doing it without integrity and without discernment. But, you don't go to the horse world and expect integrity and discernment across the board. I'm sorry, that's a really harsh thing for me to say, but that has been my experience, that integrity and discernment in the horse world is uncommon. I'm delighted when I find it, and I'm always looking for it. I'm never expecting or hoping people to be lacking integrity or discernment, but that's just what I've found, unfortunately. And it's very sad for me to hold that point of view, but I have to be realistic and practical about what we're actually dealing with. The horse first training movement, to qualify that in really simple terms, is a very broad, very general, categorical statement or descriptor that I employ that describes anyone or anything that is seeking to change horse training so that it always puts the horse first, their welfare, their well-being, their experience of their training is the first priority, that our experience of their bodies is secondary to their experience of their bodies. That's my very broad descriptor. It's not specific, it's very broad. And then I could get more specific from there. So inside the horse first training movement, you will have from different disciplines. Then you will have from different, let's say, arms of service. You will have the people who approach the horse first movement through biomechanics. You will have people who approach the horse first movement through behaviorism or behavior augmentation programs. You will have approaches from horsemanship and approaches from sport. You will have approaches from classicism and you'll have approaches from modernity. You'll have approaches from people who seek to do it in the therapy modules and people who seek to do it from their equitation modules. So it can get very complicated very quickly, but it's just a very broad descriptor I use. So watching this rollback from all of these influencers who used to uphold the horse first approach and now suddenly it doesn't sound like the horse first approach anymore, I started to wonder why. And then I looked at my community and I found that the horse first community has problems too. And that these influencers, instead of challenging the community in a way that uplifts them and holds them accountable, they decided to roll back and maybe even go back to older practices, tried and true practices, regardless if they're problematic, and make these new problems scarier and more bad than the old problems, which is an interesting way to do it. What I have found is a problem in the horse first community is that we are analytical to a fault. We will analyze our work to the point that the work doesn't exist anymore, that it has become a study of the horse in the abstract and in the theory, rather than the practice of the horse in practical, real terms. And I recently had a client interaction where they asked me a question in the abstract and I answered it in the practical, and they got confused. And it took several weeks to clarify that confusion that they mentioned, that they asked a question of me in theory, Lockie, do you think horses can be X? And I didn't answer it in theory. I asked them to help me tie their question to something practical that they were actually doing and living with right now. And then they understood. I think it's also an extension of this to see many people in the horse first community roll back on practice and amp up on the thinking and reflecting and the talking. And I think the thinking and the reflecting and the talking is essential, and there's not enough of it in the horse world. But let us, as a horse first community, not overcorrect for everyone else's mistakes and try to do everyone else's thinking for them. That shows a lack of restraint and a lack of boundaries on our behalf. And I can certainly see someone who might be new to the horse first approach looking at these new set of cultural problems inside a new horse culture and going, whoa, this is not what I thought would happen. I thought that taking the horse first road would avoid problems of horse person culture, right? I thought that by taking the horse first approach, there would be no cultural problems in the community. So let me go back to the old cultural problems, because for a lot of horse people, it's more comfortable and it's easier to deal with people who are, let's say, violent or rushing or pushing or hard on horses. It's easier to deal with that and say, whoa, just a little less. Good, there it is, keep going, than it is to deal with the extreme stuckness that sometimes comes with the horse first approach. Stuckness in the sense that I've met people who are in endless loops of guilt. I mean, really endless. And it almost does not matter what counsel is offered or what solutions are placed in front of them. The guilt keeps guilting. And I've had my opinions on this, but I had a student recently on a group coaching call speak up, and they framed their guilt, their circuitous, endless, repetitive guilt. They framed their guilt, not everyone else's, Their guilt for them was about a lack of their personal discipline, because guilt felt easier to them than responsibility and taking action with new information. When you get new information, it often casts a shadow upon previous information and previous practices with a horse. And that can cause anyone who's not a sociopath to feel guilty for past actions. And I think that's good. I think we should pass through a valley of guilt on our way to a mountain of better practice. But staying in the valley of guilt is a lot easier than climbing the mountain towards better practice with new information, because the old mountain that you were on was a well-trodden path, and this one is new. You don't know, right? You don't know if it's going to guarantee you results. What guarantees you results is staying stuck in guilt, because if you're stuck in guilt and you take no affirmative action with a horse, you can guarantee the outcome, and the outcome will be nothing, or the outcome will be something for us to complain or feel guilty about again. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And getting people unstuck is essential to moving the needle. And I can certainly understand my colleagues who used to uphold the horse first attitude rolling back on their horse first attitude when they found themselves in a horse first community full of people who are too stuck to actually take responsibility to practice on a regular basis with new information. I get that, because nothing is more frustrating to a coach, a teacher, a trainer, or a farrier or a body worker to advise positive action to a client who is more interested in staying stuck in guilt and less interested in taking accountability for positive affirmative action. So, my friends, if you're listening and you feel like this shoe fits, I invite you to wear it. And I know something about this shoe because I've worn them and can wear them from time to time. And I never accuse anyone of anything that I don't also see that I have a part to play in too. And I can see where the horse first attitude has contributed towards excessive pathological guilt cycles that keep people stuck and don't actually move the needle towards better practices and better training, because all of these revelations about the way training can negatively affect a horse can get people so afraid to do anything at all, because it seems like no matter which way you turn, it's possible to harm a horse. And for a lot of people who trend towards thoughtfulness, people who trend towards reflection, people who trend towards caution rather than confidence, this sort of approach, this brazen approach to accountability and brazen approach to the revelation that horsemanship has a long, sad history with abuse of the animals that we love, that this revelation towards that kind of person doesn't encourage them towards accountability and change. It encourages them towards guilt, sadness, and stuckness. So I can see the ways that I might have contributed to that. And at the same time, there still must be space for voices to reveal this information without us walking on eggshells around the emotions of people who are learning to feel their feelings. I think everyone needs to learn how to have critical thinking again. And one of the areas of rollback that some of my colleagues have engaged in, their rollback from the horse first approach, one of their talking points was criticism of critical thinking, criticism of judgmentalisms, right? Kind of asking people to not judge others for the way that they train and framing that up as a moral failure. In my opinion, anyone who orchestrates a rhetoric that seeks to demonize critical thinking are attempting to do so because they wish to protect the accountability for them to do better with their practice. They are trying to hush up, push back against approaches that they rely upon for success, especially if those approaches are questionable. And that is something I'm not going to extend much grace to. I'm just not going to extend much grace to, and I won't give it further airtime now. So there's been pushback and rollback on the horse-first approach this year, in my opinion, no doubt. And I can see why. And I can see why not, why that shouldn't have happened. But it hasn't deterred me, not one bit, not one iota have I been deterred from advocating for a vast editing process of traditional and mainstream practices so that we can ensure the future of our sport, our hobby, and our lifestyle as horse people. Because if we can't learn how to behave ourselves around horses, it's not if, but when we will start to have limited, reduced, or even totally removed access to the animals that we love. That's an alarming thing to say, but there is historical precedence in regards to other animals that used to be in human use and service. And the horse will be the last one to benefit from broad spectrum political movement to protect these animals. They'll be the last animal. Politics will protect an elephant before they protect a horse. They'll protect a gerbil before they protect a horse. They'll protect a dog before they protect a horse. The horse is the last animal that will benefit from human protection. The sad fact is, if horses were a robust feature in the human food chain, they would receive broad spectrum better protection at a political and bureaucratic level than they currently do. I was just out in California, as I said, and I was driving through rural regions where there were an abundance of boarding barns or livery businesses. And we're driving through rolling green hills, hectare upon hectare upon hectare upon hectare of beautiful horse pasture. Horse pasture in the sense that it wasn't lush cow pasture. It was fine, arid California wild meadow, the kind of stuff that horses are designed to thrive on. And there would be like maybe one cow per 5 hectares out there. You know, these cows were living beautiful lives out there. And then you drive past boarding barns and there would be 50 horses living in chicken coops. And the difference is the cows are part of the human food chain and the horses are not. The horses are being consumed, but not for meat. They're being consumed in other ways. And there are laws in the United States or in California. And I speak about California because I wasn't like out in the boonies. I was near Silicon Valley, which is supposed to be one of the most educated and erudite hotspots in Western society. And yet in one of the most, innovative centers for human advancement in the world, in the 4th largest economy in the world, California, you have horses living in chicken coops. We've got to do better. So we've got big problems. The horse world has got even bigger problems than chicken coop lifestyles. We've got problems everywhere. And there's also a lot of good happening at the same time. And I understand people out there who feel blown around in the wind by it. And they're just like, oh my God, it's just so chaotic. I don't know which way to go. Everyone's screaming. And so I think that issue, people who feel overwhelmed, it's not because of external factors. If we feel overwhelmed, it's because we haven't decided who we are. We didn't get off the fence yet. What is home for you? is one of the keystones of my life and my work. What's true for you? Okay, they think this and this person thinks that. Great. Take that information in. What about you? What do you think? What do you want? What do you want to do? What feels right to you? Now move with that information. Oh, but no, don't wait for someone else to instruct you, validate you. What feels right to you and move on that issue. Move on that issue. Oh, but what if this, other information? Nope. Take action with the information you have now, circling back to the stuckness. I push everyone that I teach to take action now. Don't wait for your confidence to feel confident about your confidence before you're confident. Stop waiting for it to make perfect sense in the abstract before you take action in the real life. Horsemanship is something that requires practical implementation from the first moment that inspiration strikes you, because the second moment of inspiration will come from the first practical implementation that you put in. You've got to practice, 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 practice before it feels perfect, practice when it feels uncomfortable, practice before you're confident that it's the right thing to do. You've got to start practicing and developing data points and work your craft and your skill this way. And stop waiting for authority figures to give you permission to be good at what you do. Stop waiting for authority figures to tell you what to do. And if you're with an instructor that makes you feel like you can't take any action without their approval, find your wallet, keep it close to your body, and start running away from them. Because even outside of my company, I can point out to you dozens and dozens of trainers who are striking close or below the poverty line, who will want you to think for yourself, who will want you to be a fully realized version of your autonomous adult talent, rather than a puppet serving some leader's ego, because they're not able to get in control of the cultural pitfalls that have been laid before them for most leaders in Western society. And they are egoism before community, they are control before coaching, and they are fear of letting your students be better than you and surpassing you. I don't have any of those hangups. I want all my students to be even better than I am, much better than I am, please God. And I want all of my students one day to have experiences with me where I am the least interesting person in the room compared to them and their horse. That's what I want. I want to facilitate in a way that they even forget that I'm there, that I can push people to get out of their own way and take action. Take action and practice with these ideas. Stop asking to relearn something you already understand. Take action. Okay, I'm going to step off my soapbox. That was enough pontification and diatribe for 1 year. Thank you for being here. I want you to remember that whoever you think I am, take that and make it smaller, but not through disrespect of me. I want you to remember that I'm just a person running a small business, trying to make a living, and that I very reluctantly pick up any kind of leadership role in a broader sense. And I'm really not interested in helping anyone that doesn't want my help or changing anyone that doesn't want to be changed. I'm really not interested. And I really need people to start approaching anyone they perceive as a leader better, in the sense that I want you to be thoughtful, to think about yourself, and to think about the relationship between you and your learning, and to think about the relationship between you and your horses and your future. Because the year of false projections and parasocial relationship and making a business owner, a service provider, a teacher, a coach to be someone that they're not based upon projection is just a really tired storyline. That's a little bit 2023, in my opinion. I just want you to remember, despite the fact that you might listen to my podcast and like it, you might listen to my podcast and not, you might think certain things about me or whatever. I just want you to remember, I'm just a person. I'm just a person, and I'm just trying to do my work. That's all I'm trying to do. And trying to live a good life in the process. So, 2026, what can we expect? Time management is one thing we can expect from me. I just had a come to Jesus meeting with Catherine, my administrator, about my time management, which I was late for that meeting, which is very apropos. But we had a big discussion about my time management, and we have very carefully calculated all of my working hours for next year into 4 semesters. And I've taken students into mentorship programs, less students than I took this year, in a way that I can really control access to my time and my service so that I'm serving people in their highest and best good and creating efficiency and space in my life for everything else that I want to and would like to use my life for. I'm also in the process of writing a book. I got a book deal towards the end of this year from Trafalgar Square Publishing, which used to be, Trafalgar Square Publishing, but it's now been bought out by the Stable Book Group. It's used to be a small equestrian publisher that's gotten bought out by a larger conglomerate, but they're still operating the equestrian arm of their publishing. They've published, I believe they published a bunch of people we know. Gert Huishman, they published. Mark Rashid, they've published. Janet Jones, they've published. A bunch of really interesting people that whose work floats around my peripheral every now and then. And they've decided to publish yours truly. God help them. We had several meetings leading up to signing the contract, which I have signed. And the book will be called Emotional Horsemanship, predictably. And I promised them that it won't be a manifesto diatribe takedown piece on abusive horse training. I promised it won't be. And at the same time, I've said to them, quote, I am resistant and will be very resistant to any attempts to tone police me. And they said, yeah, we want you to write the book you want to write. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I hope it will be an uplifting, informative, and corner-turning book for people who still like to read real books. And I have to hand in a manuscript on December 7th, 2026. So I've got to sit down and write a book next year. So my time management's important. I will be doing an emotional horsemanship camp here on my farm. All of my instructors will be here on my farm for 5 or 6 people who will be invited to come and study with me and my team and my horses for 1 whole week. I'm also running multiple retreats, which are 4.5-day long weekend study containers here on my farm with maximum 4 people at a time. And I'm also running internships here on my farm, which are 2-week work study opportunities here on my farm for people who are already familiar of my work. All in-person services here on my farm are for people who have already studied an online course. I don't take people on my farm who are totally cold clients, and cold clients is not a judgmental term. It's a descriptor for a client who has never studied or done anything with you before. I don't take a cold client here on my farm because that's a really awkward and expensive way to figure out whether you're compatible or not. So, yeah, but those opportunities are open if you're interested in retreats or internships. It's all up on my website. If you can't find it on my website, send us an email. We'll point you in the right direction. My online courses are all professionally hosted on a really awesome new platform. They are available to sign up at any time. And the Emotional Horsemanship School, which is a subscription-based service where you get over 250 tutorials and more added every month, plus live meetings with me and my team to answer all of your questions and have discussions just like these ones. That is available for sign up at any time. I will also be presenting my first clinic in the United Kingdom in July of 2026, actually 2 back-to-back clinics in central United Kingdom. So we're centrally located, geographically central, hopefully to help people come in and have a look. And then in the October period of 2026, I will be in Western upstate New York, again for my third visit to Nashville Equestrian Center, which I'm very excited to return. I will be in Ottawa at Willoway Farms with my host, Susan Allen. I'll be back there. Both of those clinics are 3-day clinics, and I will be with my friend Emily Frost up in Edmonton, up in cold Edmonton, Alberta in October also. And I will be presenting for the first time an introductory clinic in Kelowna. I hope I'm saying that right. Kelowna, British Columbia, so Western Canada, near Vancouver area. I'll be flying into Vancouver and then I'll be appearing in Kelowna. It's a 2-day introductory clinic with my friend Christy from the Okanagan School of Natural Hoof Care. She's my host. So I'll be doing those clinics next year. It's a slow year for clinics because I needed a slow year for clinics. And then there will be Homecoming 4 happening at the end of next year. And I think that's all I will have time for next year, frankly, plus season 3 of this podcast. And I also plan to be doing a lot more with my YouTube channel because I'm really trying to create more free-to-air stuff for people to learn. I just haven't had the time. So I'm hoping to use some of the time I'm claiming back next year to put more up on YouTube. You can also count that I will be taking regular days off and personal time and holidays throughout the year because I'm 35 and I'm doing well, and I would like to feel like a 35-year-old who's doing well, and that involves personal time and personal travel. So that'll be happening next year, meaning that when I do show up, I should be showing up well-rested, energized, and inspired to serve. Thank you for being with me, and I wish you a lovely Christmas, a happy new year, and I will see you on the other side. Take care.